What if I told you that some of the most powerful brain-healing compounds on the planet aren't locked inside pharmaceutical labs but growing quietly in gardens, forests, and kitchen windowsills all around you? Most people don't know this, but while we're all spending billions on synthetic cognitive enhancers and prescription memory drugs, there are plants that ancient civilizations used for thousands of years to keep their minds sharp and their brains resilient against aging. Plants that modern science is only now catching up to. Plants that contain specific compounds capable of crossing the blood-brain barrier, stimulating nerve growth, and protecting neurons from the damage that leads to memory loss. Stick around because number 17 on this list is a common kitchen herb that Shakespeare literally called the plant of remembrance. And in 2025, researchers at Scripps Research synthesized a compound from it that reversed memory loss in Alzheimer's models almost back to normal. And number 20 is a plant so ancient it survived the dinosaurs. And its story might just change the way you think about your own brain forever. Make sure you hit that subscribe button because we post new videos every week that reveal the hidden science behind the plants most people walk right past without a second thought. So, let's get into it. Here are 20 immortal plants that reverse memory loss naturally, ranked from remarkable to absolutely extraordinary. Number 1. Periwinkle, the forgotten mind flower. You've probably seen this delicate little plant creeping along garden borders with its violet-blue blossoms, never once suspecting it holds one of the most potent brain compounds ever discovered. The periwinkle, known scientifically as Vinca minor, has roots in European folk medicine dating back to the Middle Ages. Herbalists across France and Hungary prescribed it for headaches, dizziness, and what they called weakness of the mind. Modern science has more than caught up. The alkaloid vinpocetine, derived from this plant, has been shown to increase cerebral blood flow and improve glucose and oxygen utilization in the brain. Clinical research demonstrates that vinpocetine enhances memory and cognitive function, particularly in elderly patients experiencing age-related decline. It works by inhibiting an enzyme called phosphodiesterase, which relaxes blood vessels feeding the brain. Here's how it was used. Traditional herbalists brewed periwinkle leaves into a tea for elderly patients experiencing forgetfulness. In parts of Eastern Europe, the plant was prescribed for vertigo and ringing in the ears, conditions now understood to be related to poor cerebral circulation. Periwinkle fell out of the mainstream because once vinpocetine was isolated and synthesized, the whole plant became irrelevant to the pharmaceutical model. You can't patent a garden flower. So instead, the synthetic version got all the attention while the original plant was dismissed as ornamental. Think of it as the grandmother who quietly held every family recipe but never got the credit. Number 2. Lemon balm, the scholar's calm. There is something almost paradoxical about a plant that simultaneously sharpens your memory and soothes your nerves. But that's exactly what lemon balm does, and it's been doing it for centuries. The ancient Greeks grew Melissa officinalis in their gardens specifically for mental clarity, and Pliny the Elder documented its use for lifting spirits and strengthening the mind. In the medieval period, Carmelite nuns distilled it into a tonic water they called eau de carmes, believed to restore youth and mental vigor. Recent clinical studies show that lemon balm contains rosmarinic acid, a compound that inhibits acetylcholinesterase, the same enzyme targeted by modern Alzheimer's drugs like donepezil. Research has demonstrated that participants who consumed lemon balm extract showed measurable improvements in both accuracy and speed of attention tasks. The plant also modulates GABA receptors, which explains its calming effect without sedation. Traditional use included steeping the fresh leaves into a tea taken before periods of study or important decisions. It was also used in baths for elderly patients experiencing confusion. Herbalists combined it with sage and rosemary in what they called brain tonics. Why did it fade? Because lemon balm grows like a weed. It's almost too easy to cultivate, too common to seem valuable. When something grows in every backyard, no one takes it seriously as medicine. Think of it as the quiet student who aces every exam but never raises a hand. Number 3. Gotu-kola, the tiger's herb. In the jungles of Sri Lanka, there is an old saying, elephants never forget because they eat gotu-kola. Whether or not elephants actually seek out this plant, what's remarkable is that cultures across Southeast Asia independently arrived at the same conclusion. This plant makes you smarter. Centella asiatica has been a cornerstone of Ayurvedic, Chinese, and Indonesian medicine for over 2,000 years, prescribed specifically for mental fatigue, poor memory, and cognitive decline. Modern research reveals that gotu-kola contains triterpenoid compounds, particularly asiaticoside and madecassoside, which promote nerve cell growth and enhance dendritic branching in the hippocampus, the brain's memory center. Studies in aged animals have shown that gotu-kola extract improves spatial learning and reduces oxidative damage in brain tissue. The plant also increases levels of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, a protein critical for learning and memory. Here's how it was used. In India, children were given fresh gotu kola leaves to chew before school to improve learning. Thai healers brewed it into a tea for elderly patients with failing memory. In traditional Indonesian medicine, the whole plant was eaten raw in salads specifically for mental sharpness. Gotu kola was pushed aside because it was confused with kola nut, lacked a standardized extract for decades, and was the medicine of cultures Western science wasn't paying attention to. Think of it as the ancient map everyone lost, only to realize it led to treasure all along. Number 4. Shankpushpi, the conch flower. If you've never heard of Shankpushpi, you're not alone. This delicate morning glory relative is virtually unknown outside of India, yet it has been one of the most revered brain tonics in Ayurvedic medicine for over 3,000 years. The name itself comes from the Sanskrit word for conch shell, describing the spiral shape of its flowers. Convolvulus pluricalis was traditionally classified as a medya rasayana, a term meaning that which rejuvenates the intellect. And here's what research now proves. Shankpushpi contains a range of bioactive compounds including scopolamine, camphorol, and specific triterpenoids that have demonstrated neuroprotective effects. Studies show it enhances memory consolidation by modulating acetylcholine levels in the brain and reducing cortisol, the stress hormone that actively destroys hippocampal neurons over time. Research in animal models has revealed significant improvements in learning and memory retention following supplementation. Traditional use included grinding the whole plant into a paste mixed with warm milk and honey, given to students during examination periods. It was also prescribed to elderly patients as a daily brain tonic and used to calm anxiety that accompanies memory decline. Shankpushpi was forgotten because it belongs exclusively to the Ayurvedic tradition and never crossed over into Western herbal pharmacopoeia. Without a Western champion, it remained invisible to the global market. Think of it as the ancient textbook written in a language no one in the West bothered to learn. Number 5. Turmeric, the golden guardian. You know turmeric as the bright yellow spice that stains everything it touches. But beneath that golden exterior lies one of the most studied anti-inflammatory compounds in modern neuroscience. Curcuma longa has been central to Ayurvedic and traditional Chinese medicine for over 4,000 years. In ancient India, it was called the spice of life, and used not just for cooking, but as a medicine for everything from wounds to melancholy to what Ayurvedic texts describe as sluggish mind. Modern science has caught up in a big way. Curcumin, the primary active compound, crosses the blood-brain barrier and has been shown to reduce amyloid beta plaque accumulation, one of the hallmark features of Alzheimer's disease. Research demonstrates that curcumin enhances neurogenesis in the hippocampus, literally stimulating the birth of new brain cells. It also increases levels of brain-derived neurotrophic factor and reduces chronic neuroinflammation, which is increasingly recognized as a major driver of cognitive decline. Here's how it was used. Indian healers mixed turmeric paste with black pepper and warm ghee, a combination that dramatically increases curcumin absorption. It was given to aging patients daily as a preventive brain tonic. Turmeric was marginalized in Western medicine because curcumin has notoriously poor bioavailability on its own, and early studies that ignored this absorption problem produced underwhelming results. It was easier to dismiss the spice than to solve the delivery problem. Think of it as gold buried just inches below the surface, overlooked because nobody brought the right shovel. Number 6. Brahmi, the grace of consciousness. There is a reason the ancient Vedic scholars named this plant after Brahma, the Hindu god of creation. Bacopa monnieri, commonly called Brahmi, was considered so vital to intellectual development that it was given to newborn children in some traditions. For over 3,000 years, Ayurvedic practitioners have prescribed it as the ultimate memory enhancer, a plant believed to expand consciousness itself. And here's what modern clinical trials confirm. A systematic review of randomized controlled trials found that Bacopa extract improved performance on 9 out of 17 tests, specifically measuring memory-free recall. A landmark double-blind placebo-controlled study showed that elderly participants taking 300 milligrams of Bacopa extract daily for 12 weeks demonstrated significant improvements in visual memory, verbal recall, and the ability to process new information. The plant's active compounds, called bacosides, enhance synaptic communication by modulating acetylcholine, serotonin, and dopamine pathways simultaneously. Traditional use included preparing a paste of fresh Brahmi leaves with honey and ghee, consumed on an empty stomach each morning. Children were given it before Vedic studies, and elderly scholars took it throughout their lives. Brahmi was forgotten in the West because it's a swamp plant. It grows in wet, muddy conditions, looks completely unremarkable, and has no dramatic flavor or aroma. No one expects genius medicine to grow in a ditch. Think of it as the unassuming librarian who has read every book in the building and remembers every word. Number 7. Rhodiola, the Arctic survivor. In the frozen mountains of Siberia, where temperatures plunge well below -40 and the growing season barely lasts 2 months, there is a plant that not only survives but thrives. Vikings carried it on long voyages to maintain mental endurance. Soviet scientists studied it and classified research programs to enhance the cognitive performance of cosmonauts and chess grandmasters. Rhodiola rosea, sometimes called golden root or Arctic root, is the ultimate stress brain adaptogen. Recent clinical studies show that rhodiola contains rosavin and salidroside, compounds that modulate cortisol levels and protect neurons from stress-induced damage. Research demonstrates improvements in mental fatigue resistance, attention, and cognitive function, especially under conditions of stress, sleep deprivation, and physical exhaustion. The plant influences serotonin and dopamine precursors, supporting both mood and memory simultaneously. Here's how it was used. Siberian healers brewed the root into a strong decoction for hunters and soldiers facing extreme conditions. Scandinavian traditions called for chewing the raw root before battles or long sea voyages. In traditional Mongolian medicine, rhodiola was prescribed for brain exhaustion after prolonged mental work. Rhodiola disappeared from Western awareness because Soviet research on it was classified during the Cold War. By the time those studies were translated, decades had passed. Think of it as the soldier who won every battle in secret and whose medals were locked in a vault no one opened. Number 8. Ashwagandha, the strength of 10 horses. The name says it all. In Sanskrit, ashwagandha means smell of the horse, not just for its earthy aroma, but because traditional healers believed it gave you the vitality and mental stamina of a stallion. Withania somnifera has been central to Ayurvedic medicine for over 3,000 years, classified as a rasayana, a rejuvenating tonic meant to extend life and sharpen the mind. Modern science has caught up with dramatic results. A randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled study demonstrated that participants taking 300 milligrams of ashwagandha root extract twice daily for 8 weeks showed significant improvements in visual memory, verbal recall, and overall cognitive function. The plant's active compounds, called withanolides, modulate the GABAergic and cholinergic systems and have demonstrated potent antioxidant effects that protect brain tissue from neurotoxic damage. Its Latin species name, somnifera, means sleep-inducing, hinting at its ability to restore the deep sleep cycles critical for memory consolidation. Traditional use included preparing the root as a powder mixed with warm milk and taken before bed. It was prescribed for mental exhaustion, age-related cognitive decline, and anxiety that impairs concentration. Warriors took it before battle for mental clarity under pressure. Ashwagandha was dismissed by Western medicine because of its strong smell, and because it came from a tradition that mainstream pharmacology wasn't interested in studying until recently. Think of it as the wild horse no one could tame until someone realized its strength was the whole point. Number 9. Sage, the salvation herb. The very name says everything you need to know. The word sage comes directly from the Latin salvare, meaning to save or to heal. Ancient Romans considered salvia officinalis sacred and harvested it with elaborate rituals, never using iron tools, always barefoot, always after making offerings. Greek physicians Dioscorides and Theophrastus documented its use for sharpening the mind and improving recall. In medieval Europe, there was a common proverb, "Why should a man die while sage grows in his garden?" And here's what research now proves. Sage contains compounds that directly inhibit acetylcholinesterase, the enzyme that breaks down acetylcholine, the neurotransmitter most critical for memory and learning. This is the exact same mechanism targeted by donepezil and galantamine, 2 of the most prescribed Alzheimer's drugs on the market. A recent study found that among 9 herb extracts tested on human neural stem cells exposed to oxidative stress, sage extract was the most effective at reducing reactive oxygen species, enhancing cell survival, and increasing the expression of nerve growth factor. Traditional use included burning dried sage and inhaling the smoke for mental clarity. Herbalists brewed strong sage tea for elderly patients with failing memory, and the leaves were chewed raw before important intellectual tasks. Sage was forgotten as medicine because it became so common as a cooking herb that no one took it seriously. When something sits next to the salt shaker, you stop seeing it as pharmacy. Think of it as the wise elder whose advice everyone hears at dinner but no one writes down. Number 10. Schisandra, the 5-flavor berry. In traditional Chinese medicine, there is a concept that true healing engages all 5 tastes: sweet, sour, salty, bitter, and pungent. Schisandra chinensis is the only plant in the entire Chinese materia medica that contains all 5. For over 2,000 years, it has been prescribed as a supreme tonic for the mind, the body, and the spirit. Chinese emperors consumed it daily, believing it sharpened perception and prevented the forgetfulness of old age. Modern science has caught up. Schisandra contains a unique class of compounds called lignans, particularly schisandrin B, which have been shown to improve cognitive function by enhancing cholinergic activity in the brain and reducing neuroinflammation. Animal studies demonstrate that schisandrin B protects hippocampal neurons from oxidative stress damage and improves performance in spatial memory tasks. The plant also supports mitochondrial function in brain cells, essentially keeping the cellular power plants running efficiently. Here's how it was used. Chinese physicians dried the berries and brewed them into a tonic tea, often combined with ginseng. Taoist monks consumed them during prolonged meditation to maintain mental clarity over hours of practice. The berries were also prescribed after illness to restore cognitive function diminished by fever or exhaustion. Schisandra faded from Western awareness because its complex flavor profile was unappealing to Western palates, and its benefits required consistent daily use over weeks, not the instant results modern consumers demand. Think of it as a symphony that requires all 5 instruments playing together to create something none could achieve alone. Now, if you're finding this valuable, and you're starting to realize just how much brain-healing knowledge has been hiding in plain sight for centuries, do me a huge favor. Hit that like button right now. It helps this video reach other people who deserve to know that their memory doesn't have to fade, that nature already built the pharmacy, and that the answer might be growing in their backyard. And if you haven't subscribed to the Garden Path yet, click that subscribe button and ring the bell. We're building a community of empowered, knowledgeable people who refuse to accept that cognitive decline is inevitable. And I'd love to have you as part of it. All right, let's keep going because we're just getting to the really amazing ones. Number 11, ginseng, the root of heaven. For over 5,000 years, the root of Panax ginseng has been the most prized medicinal plant in all of Chinese medicine. The name Panax itself comes from the Greek word panacea, meaning cure-all, and the genus name was chosen deliberately. Emperors fought wars to control the mountain regions where wild ginseng grew. A single wild root could be worth more than its weight in gold, and in some periods of Chinese history, possessing unauthorized ginseng was punishable by death. And here's what research now proves. Ginseng contains a family of compounds called ginsenosides that have been shown to enhance cognitive function through multiple pathways. They modulate neurotransmitter release, reduce neuroinflammation, and promote neuroplasticity. Clinical studies demonstrate improvements in working memory, attention, and cognitive processing speed in both healthy adults and those with cognitive impairment. Specific ginsenosides have been shown to protect hippocampal neurons from beta-amyloid toxicity, one of the primary destructive mechanisms in Alzheimer's disease. Traditional use included slow cooking the root into a restorative broth consumed daily by scholars, monks, and royalty. Wild mountain ginseng was harvested only in autumn, when the plant's chemistry was believed to peak. The root was also sliced thin and held under the tongue for rapid absorption before intellectual work. Ginseng was diminished in Western perception because the market was flooded with low-quality, mass-produced products that bore little resemblance to the traditionally prepared root. Think of it as the king who was overthrown not by an enemy, but by 1,000 cheap imitations wearing his crown. Number 12, cat's claw, the memory vine. Deep in the Amazon rainforest, indigenous healers of Peru's Ashaninka people have used a thorny vine for centuries as medicine for the mind and body. Uncaria tomentosa, named for its claw-shaped thorns, was traditionally brewed into a powerful tea for cognitive restoration and neurological health. The Ashaninka consider it one of their most sacred medicinal plants, and its use has been documented in their healing traditions for generations. Modern science has caught up. Cat's claw contains proanthocyanidins and oxindole alkaloids that have demonstrated neuroprotective effects. Researchers have found that specific preparations of this vine can reduce beta-amyloid plaques and tau tangles, the 2 pathological hallmarks of Alzheimer's disease, in laboratory models. The plant's potent anti-inflammatory compounds also reduce neuroinflammation that accelerates cognitive decline. Here's how it was used. Ashaninka healers prepared the inner bark by boiling it for hours into a concentrated decoction given to elders experiencing memory decline. The vine was also used to recover mental clarity after illness or trauma and combined with other rainforest plants in elaborate healing ceremonies. Cat's claw was marginalized because rainforest medicine has always been dismissed as folklore. That dismissal is being proven wrong. Think of it as the vine that climbed higher than the scientists were willing to look. Number 13, holy basil, the incomparable one. In India, you will find tulsi growing in the courtyards of millions of homes, not as a spice, but as a sacred presence. Ocimum tenuiflorum, known as holy basil or tulsi, occupies a unique position at the intersection of spirituality and medicine. It has been revered in Hinduism for thousands of years, planted near temples and homes as a protector, and prescribed by Ayurvedic healers as a supreme adaptogen for the mind. And here's what research now confirms. Holy basil contains eugenol, rosmarinic acid, and ursolic acid, compounds that exhibit strong neuroprotective effects. Studies demonstrate that holy basil extracts improve spatial memory, reduce stress-induced brain damage, and enhance acetylcholine levels in the brain. The plant's adaptogenic properties help regulate the hypothalamic-pituitary-adrenal axis, reducing the chronic cortisol exposure that literally shrinks the hippocampus over time. Traditional use included chewing fresh tulsi leaves daily, often in the morning as a meditative practice. The leaves were also brewed into a tea with black pepper for enhanced absorption, and the extract was applied to the forehead during meditation to promote mental clarity. Holy basil was overlooked by the West because of its spiritual associations. When a plant is tied to religious practice, modern science tends to dismiss it as superstition rather than investigate it. Think of it as the prayer that also happens to be a prescription. Number 14. Maca, the Incan brain fuel. High in the Andes Mountains of Peru, at elevations above 13,000 feet, where almost nothing else will grow, there is a root vegetable that sustained the cognitive endurance of an entire empire. The Inca fed Lepidium mayeni to their warriors before battle and to their messengers, the chasquis, who had to memorize and relay complex messages across hundreds of miles without writing them down. That requires extraordinary memory, and the Inca credited maca as the source of that power. Modern research reveals that maca contains unique compounds called macamides and macaines, along with glucosinolates, that have demonstrated neuroprotective effects. Studies in animal models show that maca improves learning and memory, particularly under conditions of oxidative stress. Research demonstrates that black maca, in particular, enhances memory and learning in rodent models, with effects linked to increased acetylcholine activity and reduced oxidative damage in hippocampal tissue. Here's how it was used. Incan families roasted or boiled the root and consumed it as a daily staple food. The dried root was ground into flour for long-term storage and mixed into porridges. Warriors received concentrated maca preparations before military campaigns, believed to sharpen both physical stamina and mental clarity. Maca was forgotten because the Spanish conquest devastated Incan agricultural knowledge, and the plant retreated to remote highland communities where it survived only through indigenous farmers who refused to let it disappear. Think of it as the mountain that quietly kept its secrets while empires rose and fell at its feet. Number 15. Huperzia, the club moss of clarity. This one is going to surprise you. It's not a flower, it's not a root, it's a primitive club moss, Huperzia serrata, a plant so ancient it predates the evolution of seeds entirely. In traditional Chinese medicine, this unassuming moss has been used for centuries under the name Qian Cheng Ta, prescribed for swelling, fever, and critically, for memory loss and forgetfulness in the elderly. And here's where modern science becomes extraordinary. Huperzia serrata contains huperzine A, a compound that is one of the most potent natural acetylcholinesterase inhibitors ever discovered. It crosses the blood-brain barrier easily and has a longer duration of action than many synthetic alternatives. Clinical studies have demonstrated improvements in memory and cognitive function in patients with Alzheimer's disease and age-related cognitive decline. Huperzine A has shown neuroprotective effects against glutamate toxicity, a major cause of neuronal death. Traditional use included brewing the dried plant into a tea for elderly patients or grinding it into a powder taken with food. It was often prescribed alongside other cognitive herbs in traditional Chinese formulations designed to clear the mind and sharpen the eyes. Huperzia was overlooked because it's a moss. No flowers, no fruit, no dramatic appearance. It creeps along forest floors in subtropical Asia, looking like something you'd brush off your shoe. Nobody expects a moss to outperform a pharmaceutical. Think of it as the fossil that's still alive, still working, and still more effective than most of what replaced it. Number 16. Saffron, the crimson thread. You know saffron as the world's most expensive spice, those delicate crimson threads that cost more per ounce than gold. But long before saffron-colored paella and scented Persian rice, Crocus sativus was medicine. Ancient Egyptian physicians used it for brain-related ailments. Persian healers prescribed it for melancholy and failing memory. Greek physicians documented its ability to brighten the mind and improve recall. And here's what research now proves. Saffron contains crocin and safranal, compounds that have demonstrated remarkable neuroprotective properties. A randomized, double-blind clinical trial compared saffron extract directly against donepezil, one of the leading Alzheimer's drugs, and found that saffron produced comparable improvements in cognitive function over a 22-week period, but with significantly fewer side effects. Crocin has been shown to inhibit beta-amyloid aggregation and protect hippocampal neurons from oxidative damage. Traditional use included dissolving a few threads in warm milk or water daily. Persian physicians prescribed saffron tea for elderly patients, and it was incorporated into medicinal syrups with honey and rosewater. Saffron was never forgotten, but it was reduced to a culinary luxury. Its medicinal properties were buried under its reputation as the world's most expensive seasoning. People saw the price tag and missed the pharmacy. Think of it as the jewel everyone admired but nobody thought to look inside. Number 17. Rosemary, the herb of remembrance. Here it is, the one I teased at the beginning. And if you've been waiting for this, you're about to understand why. There's rosemary, that's for remembrance. That line from Shakespeare's Hamlet isn't just poetry, it's documentation. For thousands of years, across dozens of cultures, rosemary has been explicitly and specifically associated with memory. Ancient Greek students wore rosemary garlands while studying for examinations. In medieval Europe, it was placed under pillows to prevent nightmares and preserve memory during sleep. At weddings and funerals alike, rosemary was carried as a symbol of remembrance. But here's where this story goes from folk tradition to front-page science. Rosmarinus officinalis, now reclassified as Salvia rosmarinus, contains carnosic acid, a compound that crosses the blood-brain barrier and activates the NRF2 transcriptional pathway, switching on the body's own antioxidant and anti-inflammatory defense genes. In 2025, researchers at Scripps Research synthesized a stable form of carnosic acid called diACA and tested it on mouse models of Alzheimer's disease for 3 months. The results were stunning. Multiple different memory tests all showed improvement. The drug didn't just slow decline, it improved memory virtually back to normal. Brain tissue analysis revealed increased synaptic density, meaning more connections between nerve cells, along with reduced amyloid beta plaques and phosphorylated tau aggregates. And here is the detail that should stop you cold. This compound is activated by the very inflammation it then combats, meaning it only goes to work in the areas of the brain that are already damaged. It's a self-targeting medicine. Traditional use included burning rosemary sprigs and inhaling the smoke for mental clarity, steeping the leaves into a strong tea for memory support, and infusing the oil into baths for cognitive restoration. Herbalists across Europe prescribed it specifically for age-related memory decline. Rosemary was dismissed as medicine because it became so ubiquitous in cooking that its therapeutic identity dissolved into seasoning. We put it on roasted potatoes and forgot it was supposed to save our brains. Think of it as Shakespeare's prescription written in plain language 400 years ago, and we're only just filling it now. Number 18. Mucuna, the velvet brain bean. In the villages of tropical India and Africa, there grows a climbing legume covered in tiny, irritating hairs that will make your skin itch on contact. But inside its pods lie beans that contain one of the most powerful neurochemical precursors found in nature. Mucuna pruriens, the velvet bean, has been used in Ayurvedic medicine for thousands of years as a treatment for what ancient texts describe as Kampavada, a condition remarkably similar to what we now call Parkinson's disease. And here's what modern science confirms. Mucuna beans naturally contain L-dopa, the direct precursor to dopamine, the neurotransmitter essential for motivation, reward processing, working memory, and cognitive flexibility. Research has shown that mucuna seed powder provides clinically meaningful amounts of L-dopa with better tolerability than synthetic levodopa in some studies. Dopamine is not just about movement, it is fundamental to the encoding and retrieval of memories. And dopamine decline is increasingly recognized as a contributor to age-related cognitive impairment beyond Parkinson's. Traditional use included roasting the beans and consuming them as food, or preparing the seed powder in warm milk with honey. Ayurvedic practitioners prescribed it for mental fatigue, poor concentration, and the trembling weakness of aging. It was also used as an aphrodisiac, which makes sense given dopamine's role in motivation and reward. Mucuna was sidelined because its L-dopa content made it a direct competitor to synthetic levodopa, one of the most profitable Parkinson's drugs in history. A bean that does the same thing as a patented pill is an industry nightmare. Think of it as the velvet glove hiding an iron fist that the drug companies hoped you'd never discover. Number 19. Lion's mane, the nerve regenerator. There is no plant on this list that does what lion's mane does, technically a mushroom. Hericium arenaceus looks like a cascading white waterfall of soft spines, and it's been used in traditional Chinese medicine since antiquity for strengthening the mind. Buddhist monks consumed it as a tea to enhance focus during marathon meditation sessions. But what makes lion's mane truly extraordinary has only been understood in the last decade. And here's what science has discovered. Lion's mane contains two families of compounds, hericenones from the fruiting body and erinacines from the mycelium, that do something almost no other natural substance can do. They stimulate the production of nerve growth factor. NGF is a protein that promotes the growth, maintenance, and survival of neurons. Without it, brain cells wither. With it, they extend new projections and form new connections. Researchers at the University of Queensland found that active compounds from lion's mane significantly increase the size of neuronal growth cones, the structures brain cells use to connect with other neurons. A clinical trial in elderly patients with mild cognitive impairment showed significant improvements in cognitive function over 16 weeks. And critically, hericenones and erinacines cross the blood-brain barrier, reaching the neurons that need them most. Traditional use included cooking the mushroom as food in soups and teas, or drying it into a powder for medicinal preparations. Chinese physicians prescribed it for digestive health and mental clarity, often to elderly patients experiencing memory decline. Lion's mane was ignored by Western medicine because it's a mushroom, and mushrooms occupied a blind spot in pharmacology for decades. They weren't plants, they weren't drugs, so they fell between the cracks of two disciplines, studied by neither. Think of it as the architect who doesn't just repair the building, but designs entirely new rooms. And here we are at number 20, the one I saved for last because it represents everything we've talked about today. Number 20, Ginkgo biloba, the living fossil. 290 million years. Let that number sink in. When primitive reptiles were just beginning to crawl across Pangaea, ginkgo trees were already old. They survived the Permian extinction that wiped out 90% of all species. They survived the dinosaurs. They survived the asteroid. They survived ice ages, continental shifts, and volcanic winters. Individual ginkgo trees have been measured at over 1,600 years old, and the largest living specimens are estimated to exceed 3,500 years. When the atomic bomb fell on Hiroshima, ginkgo trees near the blast epicenter were among the first organisms to resprout. This is not just a plant, it is a survivor on a scale that defies comprehension. And for thousands of years, human beings have been consuming its fan-shaped leaves for the brain. In traditional Chinese medicine, ginkgo biloba leaves and seeds were prescribed for respiratory ailments, circulatory disorders, and, critically, for sharpening the mind. Chinese monks cultivated ginkgo trees near monasteries, and some scholars believe that many of the oldest surviving ginkgo populations in China were planted and preserved by monks over centuries. Modern science has studied ginkgo more extensively than almost any other plant on this list. Ginkgo leaf extract contains high concentrations of flavonoids and terpenoids, specifically ginkgolides and bilobalide, which improve blood flow by dilating blood vessels and reducing platelet aggregation. A clinical trial demonstrated significant improvements in speed of information processing, working memory, and executive function in healthy adults after 30 days of supplementation. Ginkgo extract is widely prescribed in Europe as a treatment for early-stage cognitive decline, and its mechanism of action spans antioxidant protection, enhanced cerebral circulation, and modulation of neurotransmitter systems, including the cholinergic pathway. Here's how it was used. Chinese physicians dried the leaves and brewed them into a restorative tea consumed daily by scholars and elderly patients. The seeds were eaten for respiratory health, though the leaves always held primacy for the brain. In Japan, ginkgo trees line city streets and temple grounds, and the golden autumn leaves are considered symbols of endurance, resilience, and the persistence of memory. Traditional use included combining ginkgo with ginseng in classical Chinese formulations designed for cognitive longevity. The leaves were sometimes powdered and mixed into food for elderly patients, and the extract was taken consistently over months, never as a quick fix, but as a slow, steady act of devotion to one's own mind. Ginkgo has not been forgotten, but it has been diminished, reduced to a gas station supplement with dubious dosing, drowned in a sea of low-quality products. And its extraordinary survival narrative, spanning nearly 300 million years, has been compressed into a label most people never read. And that's why it's number 20. Not because it's the flashiest compound or the most dramatic clinical result, but because ginkgo biloba is the single greatest metaphor for everything we've discussed today. These plants are survivors. They have endured ice ages and extinctions and the willful ignorance of modern medicine. They've been growing, producing their compounds, protecting their own cells for eons, and all we have to do is pay attention. The tragedy is not that these plants are rare, it is that they are common. They grow in gardens and forests all over the world, quietly synthesizing the molecules our brains need. We don't have to invent the cure. We just have to stop ignoring it. Ginkgo survived the extinction of the dinosaurs. The question is whether we're wise enough to learn from it. If this opened your eyes, hit that like button. and share it with someone whose brain deserves better. Drop a comment below. Are you Team Brahmi, Team Lion's Mane, or Team Rosemary? Subscribe to The Garden Path and ring that bell so you never miss what we uncover next. Nature already built the pharmacy. We just have to walk through the door.